Today we're working on a cat-eye Silverado that's got a 6.0 and a 4L80 in it. It is a 2500 HD truck, and we're going to show you how to change the oil pan gasket, the oil cooler lines, and a pickup tube O-ring. We're going to show you guys step by step how to do that, so let's dive into it. First things first, you're going to unhook your battery. Sammy's going to get us taken care of on that. Now, we did already take this thing up in the air. This was a customer diagnosed issue. They called and asked specifically to have the oil pan gasket, the oil cooler lines, and a pickup tube O-ring replaced. So we went ahead and made sure that it was the oil pan leaking. It looks like the oil cooler lines are leaking pretty good. Oil pan might be leaking quite a bit, and we do have valve covers leaking on both sides. So we are going to call the customer and recommend that we go ahead and put a set of valve cover gaskets on this thing too. First glance, the question is this the oil pan, crank seal, or these cooler lines? And as we can tell, it looks like it's mostly coming out of the cooler lines, but we can't guarantee the oil pan's not leaking up here, and we plan to change that anyway. So we're going to reseal that up. But these lines have definitely been leaking for quite a while. You can tell that by the buildup on the bottom of the pump. But the crank seal is dry, so the front seal's not leaking. And then back here, you can tell the valve covers are leaking on the back of the heads pretty well too. Get the front drive shaft out of this thing and get ready to pull the front diff. And we've got a cross member here we're going to pull out. And we've got a few things we've got to unhook from the oil pan and the engine itself. But this really isn't too bad of a job. So let's get this drive shaft out, get our front axles undone. So once you get your pry bar and pull the U-joint out of the yoke on these particular ones, you can rotate the yoke. So right here we've got a rubber boot with two clamps on it. What we do is we'll take a flathead screwdriver and a hammer, and we'll knock this clamp right here loose. We're going to pull that boot off, and that's going to allow this yoke to slide off of the splines inside the transfer case. Alright, so we pulled that boot back. Now that's going to allow us to slide out. Alright, once you get it out from there, you can snake it back through and out like this. We're going to set that to the side. Alright, so we've got two bolts holding this brace in right here. We've got two going this way with nuts on the front here, and then we've got two that go through the bottom of this side with nuts on the top. So next we're going to undo the axle flanges. So you've got 615s that hold each axle end on, the CV axles. Once we get that undone, we can unplug the electronics in the front diff and start undoing our mounts. We're just going to push that up out of the way for now. Go ahead and unplug this thing. That unplugged. Now there are going to be some, we call them Christmas trees. It's got these little hold downs going to the front diff. So I'm going to grab my trim tool and pull those off. And we've also got a vent hose on top of the diff that we'll have to pull off of the fitting. Alright, so here we're going to get our screw jack. We're going to put it under the front diff to hold it in the truck while we undo the mounts. Now, the reason we can rely on a screw jack to hold up this front diff is because we've got a mount going through the bottom over here. We've got a mount that's kind of looks the same as that one up top over here in front of it. We've got that mount right there. On the passenger side, we've got two studs that come out of a mount that mounts to the frame. We've got two nuts. If I remember right, these are 21 millimeters. We've got two more 21s over here. And then I'll hold this diff up and have one of them take the screw jack out, and we will get this thing dropped out of here. Now, if you're doing this in your driveway, I would recommend where we have the screw jack, put a floor jack, and then you can kind of use that. The diff's going to need to roll though because of the yoke for the drive shaft, so it's going to have to kind of turn as it comes out. But if you're doing this in your driveway, a floor jack would help you tremendously get this thing in and out. But being as we're on the rack, we're going to pull it out by hand. Alright,
Really proud.
Yeah. Need to go down. Alright guys, we've had a slight change of plans. I forgot that the 2500s are on a drag link setup, steering setup, not a power steering rack. So we're gonna leave the front diff actually in the truck, but we've got it hanging down pretty good. We've got it rested on the drag link. It's not gonna come out of there on its own. So from there, we're gonna go ahead and drain the oil, pop the filter off, start getting the stuff undone off of the oil pan itself and the engine block that we need out of the way. Like I said, we are doing a set of cooler lines on this thing as well as the oil pan gasket and pickup tube O-ring. So we've got to get those disconnected, but we're going to go ahead and work on getting the pan dropped, start getting everything cleaned up and ready to put back together. So on the passenger side of the oil pan, you've got a 10mm that holds on a small bracket that retain the transmission cooler lines. That's what Sammy's working on removing now.
Nasty.
Yeah, it's definitely nasty. Alright, so we got the pan out. We got to get the pan cleaned up, get the gasket surface on the block cleaned up. We're going to swap out this pickup tube O-ring while we're here. We've got to replace the oil cooler lines, so we got to get those off there. It'd be a lot easier to get the lines off the truck while we have the pan out, so that's why we're going to go ahead and do that now. Worst part of that is we've got to go up and still unhook them from the radiator up top. We're going to work on getting that done and start getting some stuff cleaned up, get this pickup tube done, show you guys how to do all that. Alright, so if you've got a stock oil pan gasket, you're going to have rivets. There's one right here, and then there's one back here where they riveted the gasket to the oil pan. And sometimes they'll be free, kind of like this one's a little loose, but you still can't get the pan off. So what we typically do is we just take a drill bit that's about the size of that rivet, and we knock the head off that thing, get the gasket off, and then we'll take a roll lock wheel on a small 90-degree angle grinder and kind of smooth that out and get rid of the rest of the rivet that's there. There's one. There's two. Now the gasket will come off. Now you're just left with kind of a burr type deal right there on the gasket surface. So once we clean that, we'll knock that down, smooth it out a little bit. Alright, so we got the gasket surface of the oil pan clean. Still got to clean the bottom out quite a bit, but we'll show you guys that. We got that cleaned up, ready to go. Got the bottom of the block and the front and rear cover cleaned up, ready to go as well. Have to wipe it off one more time. We got some oil running out of there. We still got to do this pickup tube, which if you look, if you notice, there's a 10mm bolt right here. We got to take that bad boy out. A couple of the windage tray nuts. We got that one, and then that one. And then the pickup tube will come out, and we can change this O-ring. Alright, so we got our pickup tube O-ring out. It wasn't smashed or anything, but you can definitely tell it's seen better days. Definitely doesn't hurt to replace this while we're there. Alright, so we've got a set of instructions here from a Melling oil pump. And it tells you which O-ring to use. They give you a black O-ring and a green O-ring. Luckily, we have several of these left over from engine builds, so that and O-rings. Pickup tube that has a small step down, you can see there. Then this one tapers. And then for a black O-ring, you're looking for a straight pickup tube. Now, ours on this particular truck is the first option, the one with a step on it, or an O-ring groove end, as they call it. So that means we're going to be using this green O-ring for the pickup tube here. Alright, so we got our green pickup tube O-ring. We've got a pickup tube with a step. I went ahead and cleaned this off. We'll slide this on there, put us a little drop of oil on there, help lube it and go in. Now you want to be careful when you're putting this in. You don't want to roll that O-ring up and pinch it, or else you're going to have a low oil pressure condition. So with a little bit of finesse, now we're going to get our nuts and our bolt. Go ahead and get the nuts started on the back side. And get our bolt started here. Now we just got to tighten it all up. We got the pickup tube O-ring replaced. We got the pickup tube back in the truck. Now we need to let the truck down and undo the cooler lines from the radiator, get those pulled out before we get the oil pan back in. That way we have ample clearance. So we did go ahead and push the diff back up on this one side and put one of the nuts on it just to help hold it in the truck. On the cooler lines where they go into the radiator, you're going to be dealing with these quick connects. Now the best way to do this is going to be with a pick. You can kind of pull up on one edge of it and get it started, and that'll give you a small gap in between the clip and the fitting to be able to get your pick in there and use a finger and kind of work it out. Try to show you guys what I'm doing here, but it might be a little difficult. So I don't know if can you see the clips, Sammy? Alright, so as you can see there, we've got a little bit of a gap there, so I'm going to stick my pick in between that and the fitting, and then my finger on the other side. I'm just going to kind of slowly roll it and walk it around, and that's going to allow me to retrieve this clip right here. That's important that you don't lose these, or else you're not going to be able to get this thing back together. So we've got a magnet strip on our toolbox. We put these on and have extras just in case. There's a hold down here on the E-fans that we have to get undone. And once we get this thing undone, or the lines will come off the fans. Come on. There we go. And that's going to allow us more slack to be able to get that line out of there all the way. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom one, and then we're going to take this thing back up in there and get the old lines out and get the new lines installed. Alright, so we got the lines undone, we got the truck back in the air. Now we just got to snake them out of them here.
Snake them out the front or pull them back?
I would go back a little bit to where we can get these. Can go back some more. Get these some slack in these bad boys. We bring them down and around like that. That other one's a little longer, so this is a lot easier to do without the oil pan in the truck and the front diff drop some. But it is possible to do with both of those in the truck. And then we'll just pull them this way, make a mess. But we got them old things out of there. Now we got a brand new set to install with 2 new bolts, a new gasket. Alright, so we got an oil pan gasket from BTR, part number BTR 12350. It's just a standard Gen 3, Gen 4 oil pan gasket. We're gonna get this set on here with about 3 or 4 bolts in it holding the gasket to the pan, and then we're going to come in over here. We're going to put us a dab of silicone in each corner at the front and rear cover, and then we're going to stab this thing. Alright, so we've got a few bolts shoved through, mainly because these gaskets have silicone around the bolt holes as well, and that'll kind of hold the gasket and hold the bolts in the oil pan. So at least get a few of them in there, that way once you get it up into place you can easily get it hung and started, and then from there you can put the rest of the bolts in. Now we're going to silicone the corners. We've just got some AC Delco silver RTV. Just going to put a little silicone where front cover and the block meet. That's good. Put a little bit all 4 corners. You get this one from the front. Same thing in the backs. Now we're ready for an oil pan. Now we're gonna try to slide this thing up in here. Back into its home.
Looks like we're hitting on training lines.
Alright, so we got a few bolts in it. We got the oil pan hung. About to work on getting the rest of the bolts started. That way we can tighten everything up. Then we can get the few things bolted back to the oil pan, like the trans cooler lines, the oil cooler lines, our wiring harness that goes across the front here. Plug in our oil level sensor and get our oil cooler lines fastened back to the back of the oil pan back there. It's definitely something you guys could do on a Saturday. Something you wanted to tackle yourself. All right, so we've just about got the diff bolted back up in here now. Sammy's putting the top mount bolt in. He's already got the bottom one in. Of course, they're not tightened down yet. We'll get there in a second. Then we just got to plug it up, hook up the vent tube.
Already hooked up.
Oh, he's already hooked up the vent tube. Gotta get our oil cooler lines back on there. I need to call this guy and see about changing those valve cover gaskets. Alright, diffs mounted back in there. Now we're putting the axles back on. We can go ahead and plug this thing back up right here. Don't forget your 10 mil on the passenger side and your 13 mil on the driver's side that hold down the cooler lines to the block and oil pan. Alright, so we got our oil cooler lines on the oil pan. New bolt-in gasket. Alright, so Sammy got the front drive shaft back in this thing. Got an oil filter pre-filled and on there. Got the drain plug back in it. He's putting the skid plates back on now. We just got to set this thing on the ground, fill it up with oil, and reconnect the battery. And this thing will be ready to go other than the valve cover gaskets, which we are waiting on an answer on. Alright, so we are going to put a set of valve cover gaskets on this thing, which means that the coil packs need to come off. Well, he's going to undo the main harness, take the coil packs off the valve cover, and just lay them over here to the side, and that'll allow him access to be able to pull the valve cover off. Now we are running a set of BTR valve cover gaskets, BTR-37683-2, come in a set of 2, and they are just stock replacement valve cover gaskets. Alright, so he's got the driver's side valve cover off. Probably hard to tell in this video, but this thing is smashed flat, and you can tell where it was leaking back here in the back corner. So we're gonna get this thing peeled off. We're gonna clean this gasket surface up some and get a new gasket put in it. Now, something I really want to stress when talking about valve cover gaskets is getting good gaskets. We primarily run GM or BTR. We have used LS acceleration, and I was not fond of those at all. They were a gray top gasket that kind of looked like the factory ones from back in the day. Now Delco uses a black gasket that looks identical to the BTR ones. Something commonly the parts store will give you would be the Felpro ones, the light blue ones. We found that those are typically not the right size, and you've got to kind of force it to go in the groove, and then it's prone to leak again. So I highly recommend ordering a high quality set of gaskets, whether it's AC Delco, genuine GM, or the BTR replacements. So like I said, we're running the BTR replacements in this one. We'll drop a parts link and a part number down in the description below. Alright guys, so that's going to sum up this episode. We're going to get this oil put in here, make sure this thing's got some good oil pressure on the dash. It's not leaking oil anywhere or anything crazy like that. And then we're going to get it out and get it ready to go home. We hope you found this video helpful. Remember to follow us on social media, TikTok and Facebook at 727 Motorsports. Or you can contact us through our Contact Us page on our website, www.727motorsports.net. We appreciate you guys watching. Remember to drop us a comment, let us know if you're liking the content. And always remember, if you're not following us, grab that button.